Thank you. Well, it's great to have you guys here, and we try to do this at least once a year and try to work together and hopefully keep the discussion and going between the tribe and the Board of Supervisors. So I'd like to welcome you, and let's just kind of introduce. I think everybody knows, but let's introduce ourselves again. Mike Ennis, 5th District Supervisor, which you are in my district.
Alan Machida, District 1.
Steve Worthley, District 4.
Phil Cox, District 3.
Pete Vanderpool, District 2.
I'm Neil Perone, Tribal Chairman for the Tule River Tribe.
Kenneth McDermott, Vice Chairman, Tule River Tribe.
And I'm Gary Santos, Council Member, Tule River Tribe.
Hey, welcome everybody. Okay, at this time we will we'll have public comment. If anybody in the
Do the pledge, Mike.
if we can do it. Yep, sure. Let's do that first. Let's do our Pledge of Allegiance first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please be seated. Okay, now we'll open up to public comment. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to any issues that might be pertinent to the board or the tribe may do so at this time. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it back. And the first topic on our agenda is discussion regarding the tree mortality epic at the local and state level. So, Steve, did you want to start out since you're the chairman of our deal on that?
And I had asked to have this put on the agenda because I figured it'd be of interest also to the tribe, and was hoping to have kind of a dialogue with you all in terms of what you're doing and let you know what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I am assuming you have seen the latest results from the flyover by the Forest Service.
Yes. Yeah.
And as you know, Tulare County has the most number of dead trees in California, 8,100,000. Of those, 7,200,000 on the Sequoia National Forest. And you're surrounded, we know, on about 3 sides by the forest. We have been working diligently, I would say, at trying to get the Forest Service to become more aggressive in dealing with the problem. And we've had some modicum of success. I call it that because the magnitude of the problem is so great and efforts that are being made seem very small by comparison. As of right now, to the best of our knowledge, the Forest Service is simply knocking trees down as they have available workforce to do that. They've been using primarily their fire crews to do that. So as the fire crews are called out to fight forest fires someplace else, they're not there knocking down trees. They may or may not be looking to contract out for services of people to do some of that and continue on with it. As I understand, they are only taking down trees where there is a danger of trees falling on public improvements, roads. Caltrans is doing a lot of work on the roads. If there's campgrounds or trails where we have a lot of traffic and so forth, they're knocking those trees down. But they're not removing, and they're not allowing to be removed, any trees from the National Forest because it's in a national monument or it's in wilderness. As you know, from Kern County northward, all of the Sequoia National Forest is either one of 2 things, wilderness or national monument. And it's our understanding that the Forest Service is not willing at this point to allow for any timber to be removed from the national forest from the monument areas, nor would they probably even go into the wilderness areas. So there are 2. Let me back up a little bit because the latest information I have is that last week I was contacted by Congressman McCarthy's office that there was a bill, and you may have received the same communication, I don't know, but there was a bill that was being introduced the last day of the session to encourage the Forest Service to do more timber sales. They were going to have a $300 million appropriation attached to it, put up timber for sale, allow the sale of the timber to be used to repay this money back to the National Treasury and recover their cost. However, and I pointed this out to Kyle in Congressman McCarthy's office, there are still two major obstacles for us. And I say us here, for you, the tribe, for Tulare County. And those are, one, the fact that they're not allowing the exportation of logs off the national forest. That was put in place to protect local industry when there was more of a local industry. Now we have one sawmill left. They cannot handle any more logs, especially dead ones. And so we have no home for these trees. And my thought would be that there may be a home for them if they could be exported out of the country. But you have to have an act of Congress for that to happen. This bill did not address that. And the second thing was that the bill was only to what I refer to as the working forest, the areas that are zoned for timber production, and that did not include the National Monument. So the National Monument then is another barrier to removing trees off of the national forest. So I said, in my opinion, the Board of Supervisors would support this bill. Could we support the concept of the Forest Service being more aggressive and doing more on their lands in general? But I said, unless we address these two issues for Tulare County, it doesn't do anything for us. Nothing. And that's not acceptable when you've got the worst epicenter of dead trees in the state right in our own backyard, and they're doing nothing literally about it other than knocking them down. They're just reassembling the same fuel package on the ground, so it's still there to burn and create a problem. And I'm also very concerned about the groves, because I have not heard one word that they're actually doing any kind of management activity around the groves. And I go, what is the purpose of the National Monument? It is to protect and preserve and perpetuate giant sequoia groves. And yet we lost giant sequoias, and I don't mean by a species, I mean by size, in the rough fire in the north, in the Hume Lake District, in that fire last year. And that's their responsibility. It happened under their watch. So I bring this up because obviously it's an interest and a passion of mine, but I would think also for the tribe you would have even a greater interest in this problem, and would hope that you might use your contacts, your lobbyists, your influence with Congress to try to address these issues. If you agree with the Board of Supervisors of Tulare County that these are things that have to be addressed if we're going to do anything about the tree mortality, and it's not stopping, as you know, and I'm curious how your forests are doing and what you're doing to deal with this. But that's kind of the background from which we're coming from the Board of Supervisors. Between tree mortality and drought issues, I mean, it's like our lives have really been sort of changed in our Board of Supervisors in terms of our responsibilities and areas of interest. This has become a major one for us. So that's...
And we did also, Steve, we did allocate funding for our areas of responsibility to go up and start clearing some trees as well.
Right, and that goes to we are members of the state task force on tree mortality. That's aimed at dealing with trees that are on state and county road systems and removing those trees. We've allocated some of our resources to that. Our goal is to access the 75, because of the governor's declaration of an emergency and that designation, we are eligible to receive 75% funding for those projects, but the county still has to come with 25% funding to address that particular issue, primarily our road systems. But wherever we have county facilities that are in need of protection because of dead and dying timber, we're planning on trying to access funds to do that.
Remember how much we allocated for that,
Well,
Steve?
it was minimal. It was like $250,000, something like that, which, I mean, is a substantial amount of money, but for the magnitude of the problem, it's not. I know in Tuolumne County, which is a much smaller county than ours, they have dedicated their entire reserve, which for them is like $1.5 million to fund this, because it truly is an emergency. And if you think about a forest fire and people being trapped into the mountains because they can't escape because of dead trees that are, or trees falling across the road, this is a very serious matter. So I'm curious what all's happening on the tribal lands, and if there's anything you could add to what we have in terms of knowledge, and perhaps what you might be able to help us do to accomplish something.
And I think on behalf of the tribe, we can contact our lobbyists and then to assist the county in pushing that message forward. like you said, we are surrounded on 3/4 of our reservations by the national monument in the forest. We've taken an active role. We've actually allocated some of our own general fund monies to, we have a crew that's actually already taking down the dead trees. We started in the campground areas and along the roads. Those logs are being used by the membership, or they're being brought down from the higher elevations to the lower part of the reservation so they don't add to the fuels. And that, our forester, Brian Ruger, I don't know if he made it today, but they've been working real diligently to get all of the studies done so we don't get blindsided by an environmental group here later on. To
What
make
kind of
sure.
mortality are you witnessing on your tribal lands?
Do you remember what that was?
I don't know the exact number, but it's not any better than what's going on the opposite side of the hill.
Smell a lot of the cedar trees.
The cedars were hit dramatically. We actually lost one giant sequoia over the winter.
From drought. And you're talking about the specimen trees.
Because you guys have done a good job up there of being good stewards of your forest. And
Yeah.
this drought is just, and of course with the overabundance of too many trees in some areas is what's really exacerbated the problem, so. but-
Probably doubled our thinning projects. So we're always going through and cleaning it out, trying to reduce the fuels, and so we probably doubled our thinning projects throughout the last 2 fiscal years. So just trying to prepare, because we don't see it getting any better. The river now is currently maybe 6 inches deep behind the tribal administration building, so I expect that to be dry by middle of next month.
Which is an interesting phenomenon when you think about all these trees that would otherwise be pumping water out of the ground that are dead. They're not doing that.
Yeah.
But I think it goes to the point that we've been through such a drought that even though we had reasonable amount of rain and snow this year, I think it's mostly being absorbed into the aquifers and crevices and so forth on the mountains. So there's not a lot of runoff. So have you had contact with the Forest Service in terms of trying to push them to do more on their lands?
The last project that we had talked to them about that was approved was on our northern
Boundary.
Our northern
which
boundary?
is in progress right now.
Yeah, so that was approved, so it's just getting them to move forward on that project to thin the area out between our border and their border.
I'm curious, how long has that been in the making?
Better than 10 years, but we just started it this past year. I think it,
Yeah, well, see, and that's my point. I mean, the Forest Service, when we first addressed them about this, they gave us the spiel. Well, we've got all these projects. Well, they're all projects that they've been working on for, like you said, a decade or half a dozen years. When it comes to actually dealing with the drought and the emergency, there's nothing really new other than what they're knocking down trees now around the roadways. And then, as I say, like in the state highway system that runs through, it's Caltrans that's doing that work. So they're only doing work on their lands that are not being covered by, like, and same for us. If we've got a county road that goes through national forest land, which I don't know if we have or not, but Eric's out there, he's nodding up and down, we do. Well, then we're taking down the trees, but it's the Forest Service is not doing it. And the other thing that to be aware of, and you probably are, but just to make sure, I want to make sure we're communicating one another. The big help to private landowners and perhaps to the tribe are the utility companies, because their position is that they will take down trees and remove them any place there's a danger of a tree falling on their electrical system. So it's not a major transmission line. I mean, it can be a drop to a person's home. In fact, PG&E has said, and I don't know if Edison has followed suit, that if the tree's in danger of falling on the house because of its connection to the electrical system, they will remove that tree. So that's a major savings to private property owners who would otherwise be spending $1,000 or more a tree probably to remove some of these trees. That the utility companies will do that. So that's, I don't know if that applies to any of the folks on the reservation, or you've got situations where you've got electrical systems that are on the tribal lands that rather than expend your resources dealing with that, allowing the utility companies to do so would be an interest or help to the tribe, I would think.
I think a lot of the power comes through the lower portion of the reservation, so there's not too many. It's mainly live oaks and white oaks through that area. So.
Are you also seeing mortality of the oaks, though? I've noticed that, too. On the southern and western exposures, a lot of dead oaks.
We actually have not, as far as I know.
I'm more in the northern part of Florida County.
The live oaks.
No live oaks?
Yeah, the live oaks have been particularly hard hit. I think they're not as I don't think they're as tough as the black oaks, I'm sorry, the white oaks or the blue oaks, but it seems like the live oaks have been particularly hard hit. So are you finding a home for your timber at all in terms of selling it? I mean, like the one thing about cedar trees are they will keep a long time and have a value, but have you looked at trying to export logs? I mean, because are you bound by the same constraints or can you export your logs off of?
We can export if we develop the ordinance for it. Right now, it's being used by the membership for posts. We have a couple of members that through the tribe's small business loans bought those little mills, and they're building cabins for the membership. So they're using them for corrals for personal use at home.
Do you think they're using up what percentage of the dead trees that are up there?
They're pretty much using everything they're bringing down right now, but there's still a lot more that needs to be brought down. So they're using it up. And then they'll use it for firewood in the wintertime too as well. So there's people stockpiling that.
It's my opinion that with the magnitude of the problem, any and every option needs to be on the table. Yes. Because honestly, if we were able to get 10% of the dead trees out of the forest, that strategically we probably would be doing an unbelievable amount of work. But at this point, I really am not confident that the Forest Service, they don't, this is not, it's been declared an emergency by the governor. It has not been declared an emergency by the federal government. They have never declared an emergency on the basis of tree mortality. It's always on the basis of if there's a fire. Once a fire ignites, now it's an emergency. Now they spend all the money and everything. And that's ridiculous. I mean, if this is an emergency, I mean, waiting to happen, it's like I said, it's like having an earthquake in Japan and a tidal wave is on its way to the coast of California. Do you wait till the tidal wave breaks, or do you start doing something in preparation for that? And that's really where I think we are. But it has been difficult to get the agency to treat this as an emergency. So if you agree with us that it is a true emergency, whatever we can do together to try to push this issue. I've been told by some of the people within the agency, keep pushing, because they understand what needs to be done. I'm talking about people who are not at the top, but I mean people who are the silviculturists culturists and the forest ecologists and the fire people. They know what needs to be happening, and it's not happening. So whatever we can do together to help try to bring that about, I know we certainly appreciate your assistance.
For that assistance, we actually have a meeting with the BIA next week on Wednesday. That's an item that we can bring up because we're going to see how far they are along on that northern border.
Is that part of your legislation that got passed to get your, what was it, 30-some acres from BLM?
Oh, it's 34 acres.
34?
This meeting is something else.
Okay. But
water and some other issues that we have. GSA issues that we're currently having with the feds.
I noticed when I went up the hill 4th of July weekend, looked like a lot of federal forest law people packing guns, and several carloads of them up there working that canyon. So I've never seen that before. Never seen.
What if that was related to marijuana grows sites or something?
A lot of that is when we have those. I think the last time they were there was when.
Is that military?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. They come in and did flyovers, flew everything for us to continue an effort to stop the illegal.
Did they find any grows up there?
Not at this time, but it was just a routine flyover. They flew a lot of the different canyons, but just because you fly them doesn't mean it's not there. With all the new techniques they got. I mean, you guys are, we got the forest just north of us there, and they say some of the biggest groves around are on that side. They're just all under netting.
We had a little water this year, which we haven't had in the past. And of course, I know they've diverted your water in the past up there, and you get some big farms up there diverting your water, and it'll affect you guys a whole lot.
The last one they had was a little over 16,000 plants that they pulled out. It's getting to the point where they're actually tapping into our domestic water lines.
Yeah. Oh, gee. Well, I can believe it.
It's more reliable.
Yeah, it's more reliable.
Well, any more discussion on that topic? Or I know that you guys have worked with Sierra Forest Products, and when you have timber sales, and they're usually the ones that get the timber. So, but Their biggest problem now is they've got a lot of logs and just trying to keep them wet,
Yeah.
keeping everything damp so that it doesn't go away. But yeah, we hopefully will be able to work together on this problem. I think it's something that it affects us both quite a bit. So stay in touch with us, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, we will, yeah. We'll let you know what happens next week with the Bureau.
Okay,
Appreciate
great.
it. Yeah, and please push hard, because I think that the more we can do that, I mean, we may ultimately not be successful, but I feel like we have to make every effort to do this. The problem is not going away.
I think if we scream together on this issue with the Forest Service and the amount of funding they get, because it's one of those deals where here in past years, all of their money's been diverted to the fire prevention, so they're getting less money for the management of the forest, and that's one of the big issues they're having. So if the more we scream, maybe we can get them a little bit more money.
But I will say to that point, because I know that's the first thing that they will talk about, is that let's use the resource to help pay for some of this.
Yeah.
I mean, these trees are worth money. So let's create a situation where they can sell trees, export the trees, or whatever we can do to find somebody that'll help pay for that, and then that way they can use the resource to help pay for the cost of getting the trees out of there. The problem of just getting them more money is there's never enough money, right? I mean, and if they're just going to knock them down and not move them out of the forest, that really is not all that great of help either. I mean, a tree on the ground is better than a tree standing, but from a fuel standpoint, it's still there to create part of the fuel load for catastrophic wildfires. So we really need to get the trees out. We need to use the trees to have a resource value to help pay for getting them out, and that way we can leverage the funds that they do have and get some return for it. There's been a lot. I heard the regional forester speak to when at a roundtable I attended by Congressman Costa, and the only thing he brought up was he said, "Well, there's not a lot of value to this resource, and we're trying to do more biomass." Well, the biomass thing is not working because just too expensive to get that product down to a plant. They don't have contracts with utility companies, so most of our plants are either gone or idle. And the problem is this big, and even if we could get all the plants operating, we're probably going to be working on this kind of a little fringe. Everything needs to be on the table, and I just that's the position the Board of Supervisors has taken, and we're trying to advocate that at all levels. So again, and perhaps your other tribes, can also be a part of this process. I just think that lots of other tribal councils up and down the state that perhaps could also be of assistance in this matter.
That could be something we could bring up at the Central California Chairmen's Association that the tribe has been involved with. And that's
Appreciate if you would do that.
tribes from above Sacramento all the way down. I think we're to Tejon. So there's about, I think it's the largest consortium of
Big
tribes
voice.
in the state. So
And you bring a different perspective, to this thing too. So the tribes may have much greater influence over the Forest Service than the counties would have. I don't know. I think we all need to be on the same page and do what we can to try to promote this. Do you have any questions for us?
No, their whole forest management plan needs to be reassessed, and maybe they need to change it.
Had a forest management plan.
Because
Well, that's one of the hope is. I mean, we have an immediate problem, and then there's a long term, and you're talking about the long range.
Yeah.
It is something we know that the forest needs to be properly managed. Your people used to manage the forest very effectively using fire.
we still do.
Yeah, well, but it's anticipated. I mean, the numbers I've heard is that probably 10% of the landscape was burned every year, and so when you say we're using fire, well, fire's being used, but again, the same thing. If we, with a 1.1 million acre national forest, and they do 700 acres of prescribed burns a year, they're not, you say you're addressing something. I don't mean you. I'm talking about the Forest Service. You're addressing something, but you're really not, because the problem is of this magnitude, and you're doing this much. So it's a matter of they talk about scope and scale. We need to increase the scope and scale, but they talk about it. We don't really see it happening. And it's going to take a total revamp of the entire Forest Service management system, of going back to active management of the forest. If this weather pattern is the new norm, then you better be thinning, you as a tribe, we as a people on the national forest and public lands need to be thinning trees as much as possible, or there won't be any forest. So,
Well, the key to fire too is to keep it on the ground, and that's what happened years ago. Run cattle in, cattle knock all the lower limbs off the trees, so when you burned, it stayed on the ground. It burned all that stuff and stayed on the ground, but now,
and it burned with enough frequency that your fuel loads were much, much smaller. So now we've got this huge fuel load that's there. So that's why the fires are catastrophic, because when they burn, they're not burning at low intensities, they're burning at very high intensities.
in the ground.
And that's what we're facing. And it's going to take decades of active management to turn this around. And we don't have to use just fire. I mean, you can use fire and chainsaws and use the resource to produce a revenue stream as well and provide employment. There's just an awful lot of benefits to active management of the forest. But that's a longer term thing, and we need to work on that too. And I mean, I think we should work together on that aspect. There's the immediate emergency, and then there's the long term perspective of how we're going to actively manage these public lands.
And I think they've been doing a good job because they have their timber sales, they've got their foresters, they're watching, they see a tree, that tree's dying, let's get it out of here. And that's the way the forest used to be managed, but not anymore. So you guys have done an excellent job.
Kind of lucky we're still allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Our campground area looks like it's clear cut almost. So.
You know, that's a sad part of it. There's so much dead trees.
Then we're replanting too. So.
And that's another thing you don't see anymore when you have fires. They don't go back in and plant trees. Now, the logging companies would reforestate, put in the trees when they take the trees out. People don't understand that. They think a fire goes through and then the Forest Service goes in and plants a bunch of trees. They don't plant nothing. Whatever you get's what the birds bring in. So it's a sad state of affairs. Well, let's move on to item 4. Of course, the drought. The drought's impacted all of us. But how has it affected the tribe?
Like I said before, the river's probably dropped to about 6 inches behind the administration building. We do have a lot of, actually the rain we got, we had to extend for our cattle permittings, we had to extend their time in the lower areas to try to get that wild oat down because it's so high. The plant, our current plant's doing okay at this particular point in time. Last time we checked was yesterday, day before?
Yeah.
So that was going okay. Talking about water projects, we are still doing the environmentals to raise our diversion dam up 12 feet. That's the Painted Rock site. We're also we have a couple other diversion sites. There's 2 other ones. The one's called Albert's Dam, the other one's Bill's Dam. We're looking to get those raised.
So, excuse me, you've got the authorizations, you're beyond that now, or are you still working on, do you have the authority to go ahead and do that now to increase?
Oh yeah, we can, if we go above 12 feet, then we got to go back to the Army Corps and back to negotiate with the Secretary. So we can go to 12 feet.
So I'm sorry, where are you then, you're doing the environmental work now on that, you said?
Yeah, they're doing the environmental work at what they call the Painted Rock site. That's where our primary diversion for the tribe's domestic plant is. We actually had to purchase what do they call that thing? A dredge, a small, three-man dredge, so they can get all that sand and silt and everything else that's washed down over the years out of there.
How much water can you store in there?
It's not very big. How
No.
much do you think?
It's possibly 3 foot as it is now. It was originally put in for ag use irrigation water for the Tule River community as of the other 3 sections. But years since, they've all been kind of discontinued, and even the line right now that feeds the main water treatment plant was put in for ag use irrigation, and it needs to be upgraded itself just because on a regular basis it gets holes in it, and so.
I guess your program, we're working with the Corps to build that dam up there. We could store what, 15,000 acre feet maybe?
No, nowhere near
1,000?
that. No,
Never did get
not
that.
even that. No.
What are you permitted to hold back?
Just whatever the 12 feet will hold there in that spot. The tribe has a water rights settlement that we negotiated with the downstream users a decade ago.
Yeah.
That bill never made it through.
Oh.
That was for 5,828 acre
I thought
feet.
that was still going on, but it's not.
We're still arguing with the Bureau of Reclamation over that one. They want studies done. And they've decided they want sites lower. The tribe purchased the McCarthy Ranch, which is right down below the entrance of the reservation. They want to study on what it would cost to put a dam there. And when we let them know, we only own one side of the area, and not the other side. Well, we're going to study it anyways. So that's what we're waiting for. Another issue they brought up was, well, we'll get you some storage rights down at the lake, and then we'll pipe the water back up. Well, who's going to negotiate all those right-of-ways to get that back through with all those property owners back?
Well, and what a waste.
But we're going to study it, though. So it's just kind of been just delays and delays and delays.
That's a long ways to pipe it from the lake up there.
And why would you do that when it comes right by?
Yeah,
it goes right by.
It starts right there. Yeah, we're allowed to take whatever we need to live. We're just not allowed to hold anything back other than what those 3 diversion dams, for domestic use.
So you guys rely strictly on the Tule River South Fork for your water? You don't have wells?
During the summertime, it's 60% from the river, 40% are wells and springs. We have some wells and springs. We have large holding tanks. The last tank that was put in is actually right next to my house because it was a 300,000-gallon tank, but it took it 6 months just to fill up.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you got to rinse it out, so you got to let all that water go, then you got to fill it up again.
So are you maintaining it filled?
We're actually probably maintaining about 60 to 70%. The tanks stay right around in there. During the hotter parts of the day, you can watch that meter just drop, and then at night it'll slowly go up.
That waterfall, that time we took the tour up there, did that
Chilolo
run this year?
Falls. It ran this year. Yeah, I think it might still be running right now. Yeah, it's still
Is
running
it?
right now. Yeah.
It's kind of unusual to see that up there.
You bring up a point, Mike. You had that tour. I was not able to do that. Sometime if there's an opportunity, I would like to go up, especially now with the tree mortality issue. If we have it, if it works out, it'd be nice to go up and see what's happening.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Just Amanda Peroni, you want to raise your hand? That's my assistant to my office, and she controls our schedule. So we can get you a tour of our Justice Center, of our police department, of the
We've seen
of
I've
the
seen those
forest.
facilities. I've just not seen your forest of land.
Oh, even the forest. Yeah, we can arrange that.
I think it's a good idea to do it after the first of the year. You're going to have 2 new supervisors.
That's true.
Yeah.
We might have 4 new council members. Third Saturday in January, we have our elections every year, so it's 5, then 4, and back and forth. So.
Well, the complexion of this board's going to change too.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
No, that would be good, I think, to take another tour up there. Because I went on that tour. That's been,
I did too.
when I first got on the board. It's been years ago, 2007. So, went down from all the way up to Camp Nelson and came down through the back way and down through the reservation there. Had to go through some log gates and stuff. But it was a nice tour. Saw your redwood groves. Beautiful area. Beautiful area. And the water drought problems that we've had, and of course, the state is now taking care of the problem on the east side of Porterville, coming in, doing the whole thing, engineering it, pipes in the ground. We drilled a well, city of Porterville. They're going to hook it in, but we still got the tank problem going all over the county. I mean, everywhere you go, there's those tanks sitting in people's yards. So it's a bigger problem than just East Porterville, where the real shallow wells were. It's all over the county.
How far did you guys drill your well on the east side?
That one's down about, I'm thinking 1,200 feet. They made sure they were deep enough. It's a big case. Probably one of the best wells that I would say it's probably got 3 times the capacity of any one of the Porterville wells.
Wow.
But it's right on the Tule River. If you notice where it is out there off of Olive. Then of course the state wanted us to put a filling station in out there for about $300,000. And in reality, the whole idea of drilling it was to hook in so that we could hook up people on the east side. And as far as filling, you can fill at any fire hydrant in Porterville. You don't have to have a filling station. So, got Andrew out there. Andrew, you might enlighten everybody on what the county's done. If you want to come up, there's a lot of stuff went on during this drought. The showers, the stuff we tried to do on the east side, the bottled water program, the tanks. Just might kind of just go over a few of the things, Andrew, seeing you were out there.
Good morning, Chairman, Ennis, Chairman Perone, Council members, Board of Supervisors, CEO, and Council. I apologize, I'm a little bit underdressed. I wasn't planning on speaking today.
You're fine.
You touched on a lot of it. Tulare County has, through our nonprofits, primarily taken the lion's share of the drought response from the state to the tune of about, I believe it's $12 million now of California Disaster Assistance Act funding. We currently have over 600 household tanks, 7 non-potable fill station tanks, which push at their peak over 20 to 30,000 gallons each per day all across the county. We are up into the foothill areas in Badger. We even have had folks in Hot Springs and Posey up in the mountain areas that have needed tanks being drought impacted. Unfortunately, this problem is not going away. We are continuing to work with our nonprofit partners, primarily self-help enterprises, CSAT and United Way. Self-help has actually been doing a great amount of work in terms of finding funding sources for longer-term solutions. They've been receiving several different grants from state and federal agencies and trying to cobble those together in funding packages that help homeowners deal with the entirety of the problem. One of the challenges has been that if you can get $10,000 worth of funding, a well costs you $20,000, what do you do? So they've been an extraordinary partner for us, and we would encourage both groups, both elected bodies here, to keep lobbying for additional drought relief as well. Are there any specific questions that you'd like me to answer? Again, you touched the showers, the non-potable tanks, household tanks, bottled drinking water programs going to 1,500 or 1,600 homes. We did provide passed along some donations that we received from, I believe it was Nestle or the International Bottled Water Association. I apologize, I don't remember which. We passed along to the tribe, and I believe those were distributed last year to some of your tribal elders, and we have some additional donations. We've been working with Joe Boy Perez, your emergency manager, to pass along to you guys as well. We've also been working on a mutual aid agreement between the tribe and the county, and that's kind of gone in fits and starts. It's stalled out a little bit. I apologize, I don't know the current status on that. But we are working on a mutual aid agreement just in case there were an emergency situation. We would have the mechanism in place in advance to secure the funding, the arrangements, the liability, all that sort of thing. Obviously, if there was a large-scale emergency, I believe this board and our county administrative officer would be very supportive of us just coming in immediately and helping you deal with the immediate ramifications of that. What we're trying to do is establish the framework up front, as we have with our other partners, so that we know exactly what we're doing in terms of reimbursement, liability protection, so on and so forth. So are there any specific questions that I can address?
So we're not seeing these wells come back.
We've seen a couple folks advise that their wells have recharged in the East Porterville area. Unfortunately, when I say recharged, I mean coming in spurts of brown water that are there for maybe a couple hours a day. It's not drinkable, it's not reliable, it's not consistent. And again, these are some of the deeper Sandpoint wells.
But the people out on the east side that have legitimate wells, not Sandpoints, went through this drought pretty much. I know I've talked to several people out there. Are we still emphasizing the fact with these people we're putting tanks out that are out in the valley that they need to get a well driller and get their wells drilled?
Yes, sir. So as part of the agreements that these individuals signed, there is a 12-month term of the lease agreement for the tanks and the water service. And that 12-month lease agreement has a option at the discretion of the county to extend those leases with a performance requirement of the homeowners that they demonstrate a good faith effort to pursue a solution. So they either are on a well driller's waiting list with the letter stating their position and estimated time. They can show us proof that they've attempted to get, whether they've been approved or denied, but attempted to secure funding if funding is the issue. And I apologize, there's one, the third criteria is they will benefit from a water system. For example, the East Porterville water system, those being contemplated for Monson, Oakeyville, and some other communities. So we do have that performance requirement in there. We're coming up on really our first big round of renewals, and there have been some people that haven't done anything. We're trying to balance you need to do something with not being the bad guy here, and giving people a little bit of 30-day extension. Hey, go out and apply for funding. Go out and get on a well driller's list. So we've been working with folks to not be coming in just saying you're cut off, goodbye. But we have found some folks that have just not taken the initiative, and we're emphasizing to them the need to do that.
Yeah, Andrew, are we seeing wells still go out of production? Or?
Yes, sir. So it's not immediately evident. I believe the board, and I'm not sure about the tribal council, receive the weekly drought updates, and certainly we can add the tribal council to that. The number of active wells and the number of interim solutions, as we call them, which are tanks, the aggregate numbers have remained fairly static over the spring. They are now starting to increase. What's not immediately evident by those numbers, when I say fairly static, within 20 or 30 or so over the last 3 or 4 months, what's not immediately evident there is a churn rate under the surface. There are people getting their wells drilled and new wells going dry.
And that's why it's a little hard to, that's why I asked the question, because when we see those statistics, it doesn't really indicate there's this many more new wells. It says here's the aggregate number of wells, and here's the number of wells that have been resolved, and here's the percentages that are still unresolved. But it doesn't really give us a picture of, are we continuing to see wells that are, drying up?
We'll modify how those statistics are presented in the next, either next week's or the following week's updates to give you a better perspective on that.
I mean, I know that in, I know the Alta Irrigation District, which is having a very good delivery this year. They didn't have any run last year. They're anticipating they'll be running about 4 months, I believe. And I know, speaking of the general manager, it's his expectation that what they will probably do is just be in a kind of a holding pattern. I mean, it's not going to be enough water to see groundwater recharge. It's probably just going to be kind of enough to kind of keep things where they are. Things shouldn't get worse. They should just sort of stay where they are. But it all depends where you are, because sometimes you've got stratas where you don't have immediate access from irrigation canals, and those are not going to necessarily be responsive in a time frame of a few months. So.
That's largely the plan that we've undertaken with our partners is assume status quo and maybe not as severe of a decline of groundwater levels as in prior years, but certainly not anticipating any improvement from the emergency services perspective.
I saw where they just increased the Friant allocation to
1,000 acre feet.
75%. So that's really good news for the east side, the farmers, and also for groundwater.
Well, you got Terminus and you got Success that had pretty good water this year, and that's going to be recharged, which we haven't had in the past.
Right.
We didn't have any last year. They topped out at.
It's definitely a better year, but not enough to really sort of swing back the other way, I don't think.
Anything we can deter people from pumping water. I mean, if we got surface water, that sure helps.
One of my concerns has been, and I've voiced this before, is we have any indication from the state, they're out doing East Porterville now as we speak. Do they think that's the whole problem? My concern is they finish that project and then they literally turn the valve off at their level where we've been getting the majority of this $12 million. So that's my concern, is that they finish a project that takes care of a large number and then they just shut the spigot off. And the people with a tank in their front yard are going to expect us to still put water in it, even if the state funding's cut off.
And let me just chime in real quick that what the state and their involvement was with Matheny Tract, and they were able to get this funding to the city of Tulare to get Matheny Tract residents water. They're also working on a project out in the Okieville community. They're working out in Soltz Tract. I think the state is definitely looking at other clusters other than just East Porterville, even though East Porterville is the lion's share of it.
$500,000 a month.
Yeah.
Is what East Porterville is costing the state. Well, $500,000 a month.
You might respond to that, but I don't think it's an issue. I mean, we're still working up in North County to get funding for projects at Seville and Munson, and so I don't see it stopping. They still seem to be willing to pursue assisting.
There's a recognition at the state level that fixing East Porterville is, putting out the center of the forest fire, if you will, but it's not addressing the entire forest. And we've made it abundantly clear to them that there are several places where there will be no infrastructure project possible. If you're in a dairy a mile from anywhere and your well is dry, there's nothing to hook up to. It's never going to happen. They need to be pursuing funding options, whether it's grants or low interest loans for individual homeowners to meet their individual responsibility. So they've indicated very clearly that yes, East Porterville is a big project. It'll be a big milestone, but the emergency assistance will continue beyond that water system being done, because only, I believe it's about 30% of our tanks countywide are actually in East Porterville. So the other 70% need to continue beyond that project completing.
The city of Porterville kind of won out on this too, because they got Vandalia taken care of, which they had annexed in 3 years ago, and they didn't have any water. Drive down that street and You could count 10 tanks on that street, just driving down the street, so.
So has the tribe lost wells as well in terms of this drought situation, or?
We've got some wells that have been coming just like East Portville, they come and go. We got several families right now. They got three different wells with.
Those are Hard Rock mine, or Hard Rock wells, right? Up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have them affected along with the hospital wells and all that. So even like I said, through the winter months when we really wouldn't think nothing would be going down. They actually drilled, but they wasn't producers, so.
So you've had to do some drilling and it hasn't been very productive.
No.
I know it's
Thank you,
always a-
Andrew. Does anybody else have any questions for Andrew while we had him? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that update. Appreciate it very much.
And we're used to running out of water every year, so we kind of got it down to a science
Yeah.
now. So they just do a diversion from the river when it's flowing. We have a water truck that we purchased that should be actually being built now, just in case. It's one of the reasons why when the tribe's actually looking for property outside the reservation, we want to make sure that it has water in case we have to have someplace to go to fill up to bring water back to the
Now,
reservation.
is the truck supplying potable water? Or
Potable,
just-
it's a potable
so
water
it's
truck.
drinkable, they can
Yes,
drink the
that's
water.
all it's. That's
You know,
all
and that's
it
the
is.
thing, the tanks that we have legally can be for potable water. We're not doing that. There's a fear that once you put the water into the tank, even though we're using certified water trucks and so forth, something could happen in the tank and it might come back on the account from a liability standpoint. So we're telling people not to use it for drinking purposes, but technically they could be. I mean, because those are the tanks that are designed for that, and we're putting in the water that's designed for that, but it's more of a liability issue for us.
Yeah, same with us. We're in the same boat. We have a couple families that have those tanks, and we just tell them don't drink it, don't cook with it. You know,
Okay, let's move on to water bond
Well,
project.
before we do that, we're going to talk about the JPA, the Temperance Flat project.
Yeah, that's what he's
That's
talking
what I'm
about.
moving to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, moving on to the water bond projects and Temperance Flat GPA.
Gotcha, good. We had this on there because I don't know how much engaged you've been with the Table Mountain Tribe. We have it's a JPA. We are formed for the purpose of attempting to access funding from the state water bond for the construction of Temperance Reservoir on the San Joaquin River. Table Mountain is a member of that JPA, and they're a logical member because their tribal land sits right adjacent to the San Joaquin River. They would practically be a beneficiary of this project if it gets built. Again, in terms of trying to be helpful, what we have to do is put together a plan. I'll back up a little bit. If you're not familiar with Temperance Flat, when they built Frank Dam in the 1940, in the late 30s, it was an undersized dam. It was built in the location where it was so it would be able to provide water into a canal system that's all gravity flow, both going north and going south. But it only holds 500,000 acre feet, and there's about 120,000 acre feet of that is not accessible. It's at the bottom of the dam, and the flow is out above that. So there's really only about 400,000 acre feet of space in that dam that you can really manage. In contrast to the Kings River, which has a similar runoff, has the 1,000,000 acre foot Pine Flat Dam reservoir on it. So what happens is in a normal year, that reservoir will fill up 3 or 4 times. And when we have heavy water years, in fact, 10 of the last 30 years, more than 1,000,000 acre feet of water have been lost on the San Joaquin River to the Pacific Ocean. So the Bureau of Reclamation has gone through about a 12-year or maybe 20-year, I don't know, long period of time, $35 million of study on this particular project, which would be to build a reservoir above Friant. And actually, part of it would be in the footprint of the existing reservoir, and it's a 1.25 million acre foot reservoir. The study that's been conducted by the Bureau of Reclamation is in its very, very final stages. We keep being told that. but it will show that the project is feasible. That's a huge, huge thing, because if it's deemed to be feasible, meaning that when you pay all the cost of building it and managing it, you still come out with enough of a benefit to justify the expense. That finding is critical from the Bureau, and we have entered into an agreement with the Bureau whereby they're going to provide a lot of the expertise in this application that we have to prepare. We've got less than a year to do this now, to prepare an application to the Water Commission, which was created as a result of the water bond. So our target is selling this project to the Water Commission. And we're looking at it not just from walking in or saying, we need a reservoir, we need to build a dam. It's got to be a total type of a application which looks at what are the benefits from this. What are we going to be able to do? Recharge, water for irrigation, water for cities, water for tribes, so that they have this large picture of how critical this particular project is to Central California, the Southern California, or San Joaquin Valley. And that's, again, where you may be able to be of assistance in helping us pursue this grant, because, again, the more that there's a lot of people competing for this money. And so what we're trying to do, there's $2.7 billion in the bond for surface projects. Our goal, our hope is to get about a third of the money from the water bond, a third from the federal government. Dianne Feinstein has a bill that has $600 million in it for storage projects, and then get the local beneficiaries to come up with the other third to get this project built. But it could be very transformative for us, because when this project was being evaluated by the Bureau, they were looking at it purely from the standpoint of storage, and it still comes back feasible. But I think at the end of the day, the real benefit of this project is going to be recharge, because when you're able to hold that water back and then release it in a controlled fashion, you're going to be able to access a lot of places where you can put this in, in groundwater recharge projects. So that, on top of this extra storage and additional water, is going to be, I think, critical. It's now that we have the requirement of managing our groundwater levels as well. I mean, this becomes even more important to that particular aspect of the Ground Sustainability Act. So, again, if we could call upon you to support your sister tribe and the JPA in our application process, that would be, I think, helpful, because the more support we have, again, realizing we have a water commission that's made up of a lot of different people with a lot of different interests. And so, one of the things we're really focusing on is that this is a project that's very beneficial. It's not just an agricultural project. It's not just for ag water. We've got cities like Orange Cove and Lindsay and Strathmore and Terabella. Their potable water supply comes from the Bryant Kern Canal. So when there's no water allocated, they don't have any water unless they can buy it from someplace else. And that last year was a huge problem for the city of Orange Cove. So we see this as a project which has broad benefits to a lot of different people and different stakeholders. And so we need to appeal then to the Water Commission members in that same way. So if there's somebody that's got a tribal interest on the Water Commission, that your interest in this would be that much more of a help to getting this project moving forward. And it also would benefit the tribe, because obviously you have other holdings that are not within the jurisdiction of your boundaries, outside your boundaries, that will also benefit from it. So just to let you know that that's what's going on, and again, if we can call upon you when time comes to send letters of support, that would be helpful.
I think we can do that. We're actually going to have a meeting through our NAGPRA coalition for that Table Mountain's part of, so I can talk to the chairwoman at that time to see if there's anything that we can do to help them push it forward.
Any other comments on that? Let's move on to, you kind of touched on some stuff that you were trying to do up there on the reservation. Might just go over those water projects again with us that you're working on. And
Yeah, the current one is we're trying to raise we're going the full 12?
Yeah, Painted Rock.
So the Painted Rock Diversion Dam, like I said before, is the primary diversion point for our domestic water plant. We're looking to raise that 12 feet, which is the highest that we can do it legally without having to go back to the Army Corps and talk to the Secretary of the
And
Interior.
that takes it from 3 feet to 15 feet, or
It's 12 feet total.
12 feet total? Okay.
So
Right.
a 9-foot gain.
A lot of the dams that they're only like this. The Albert's Dam and Bill's Dam, they're like maybe 2.5 feet tall.
So you get that up 12 feet, what kind of water can you put behind that?
It's really narrow where that is, so it's not going to be a lot.
Probably about
You
as
know.
big as this room.
Yeah, maybe about as big as this room.
I don't
The
even,
most. Not even that big.
yeah.
But for domestic purposes, it could be very important.
But really important. Like I said, in the summertime, we're 60% river water. So hopefully that doesn't change. We have a Black Mountain well project that's going through that they're currently working on to getting the piping in. Project with IHS. I think there was some state funding that we received for that project as well, or is it a different one?
How much water do you think you'll get out of that?
That's a proven well you already have developed, or?
Yeah. I think we did get a little bit of state funding on that one. Remember what the gallons per minute was? That one should be 180, but when we drilled that well, we drilled it, I think, with a 6-inch casing, and we can't get the whole 180 with that. We just received some more funding through IHS, which is going to be enough to re-drill it with
Larger pipe?
That's coming here in the near future, but right now it's just getting set up. We're just getting power to the site so we can pump it, and then we'll get the well fitted with the pump and everything.
You know, on Proposition 1, there was funds set aside for disadvantaged communities and I think tribes too. A substantial amount. That if you would contact Denise England in our office, and we may be of assistance to you to get funding from the state of California from Proposition 1. There's a potential there. I don't know how big it is, but there is that potential.
Yeah, every little bit helps.
How much water do you guys figure you use?
The last time when we had the meters, it was about, I want to say around 400 gallons a household. The plant itself maxes out at what, 100,000 gallons a day,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
How's your wastewater treatment plant working?
That's actually working really good, really good. Phase 3 should be starting here pretty soon. I'd like to move a lot faster if I could, but there's studies that we have to do and other things we have to do because 30% of our systems are failing that IHS installed, and that goes straight into the river.
So what is the third phase? Just increase capacity?
We've already doubled the capacity. Now it's getting in the infrastructure and moving the actual lines farther up the reservation to service more homes.
Yeah, I would think that would be a high priority for you.
It's a high priority. It's just all the studies have to be done with IHS. We just had a change of staff with the Indian Health Services, so we have a new engineer that just started last week, I think.
So is Indian Health Services a part of the BIA, or what is the Indian Health?
They're part of the. They're not part of the BIA, but they're part of the Department of the Interior for Health Services.
On that project, you may also talk to Denise about I believe that there could be some other money sitting there, state grants for discharge. So far they're pretty liberal with getting those funds out.
Yeah, that's something we'll look into. Yeah. Yeah, and we're currently still sitting on about 250 families waiting for homes, which is why the recent land purchases. I don't know if the county's aware, but we just purchased next to the Hyder property that we purchased across the street. How many acres was that?
91.
91 acres,
And 150.
and then another 150 right
Is
under
that the
there.
old Mitch Brown subdivision?
No. This was
South of it.
Ed Trailers, old Ed Trailers property there, and then there's the other property, they called it the tomato patch. A long time ago, they used to grow tomatoes there. So.
And are these good housing sites? for
Yeah,
you?
that's what we looked at them for. They're
Ground and-
fairly level, yeah. And there's access to power. The tribe's looking at kind of talking about economic development, but we'll probably get to that later. But we're looking at maybe putting in a solar farm because that's where those large power lines go through, and that's one of the requirements. So we're looking at ways to hook in. Yeah. So we may place some homes there and also solar farm, same way that they did near the airport over there.
I know you were talking about power for your pumping system, but I'm seeing more and more farmers out in the country putting in solar panels for their pumps.
Yeah.
And of course, they only can operate part of the day on that, but I mean, another source of power.
Well, let's transition into discussion regarding your feet of trust. Have you got anything that you're looking at? I know that you finally got the low ranch and all that stuff tied in to the reservation. Are you looking at any other parcels that you're thinking about doing free to trust on?
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some of them are almost done. Some of them are just waiting for a signature from the Bureau. Like I said, we're meeting with them next week. One of the requirements in our Constitution and bylaws for the tribe is for land claims, which is why we have to make the attempt to place those back into the tribal trust. But what I would like to propose with the county, and we'll play through that with the staff, is that we come up with an MOU regarding feeder trust. Do we need to put everything in feeder trust? No. Where we're going to place housing and things like that, yes, we're probably going to have to do that, just so we can maintain jurisdiction over our members, especially with our new courthouse coming in and those other things. But that's something that I wanted to propose. I'm sure we'll have to work it out with staff, your attorneys, our staff that are actually going to be working in those areas regarding the housing. The Smith Mill is one of those, is in holding that the tribe purchased, that I think that's just waiting for the signature from the Bureau. That's 160 acres?
Yeah, somewhere around
Somewhere around.
Where's that located?
That's located in our northeast quadrant of the reservation. When the executive order doubled the size of the reservation up to Springville, when they shrunk it back, they messed up on the boundary. So that was patented by somebody already in the lands office. So when they readjusted our border, they were allowed to keep that. It's just like an island floating in the reservation.
Is that where the giant sequoia trees are on the ground?
No, they're actually the southeast corner.
That's the in-holding also, is it not?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
No.
No.
The Smith Mill is south of Rogers Camp.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In general, is your plan to annex properties and put them in feed of trust in lands that are adjacent to the existing reservation?
That's the goal. We own property way out there in Kettleman.
Yeah.
I don't see us.
Great city. I go by there every
Yeah,
time.
we're not even.
I went by there the other day.
Yeah, that's one of those. And then the properties that are within the city limit of Porterville, we're not, other than the one by the airport, possibly for gaming. But all the other ones, we want to keep everything, because we have to provide the services the same way that the county and the cities would for those areas. So we're trying to keep them clustered. And it's just to meet our need. Like I said, we have a little over 250 families that are waiting for housing. And on the current reservation, those of you that have been there, it's pretty vertical. It's red clay and granite, and there's just no way
and then
to
you have a
meet the
problem
need.
with infrastructure. Even if you,
Yes.
let's say you wanted to put in an apartment building or something on a small piece of property,
Yeah.
you've got to have the water and the sewer capacity and so forth to handle it, which is another issue.
Which is why we're trying to also make some purchases through our economic development arm. Gary Santos here, he sits as the president of our Tule River Economic Development Corporation. With the way the tribe's constitution was written and approved, when the tribe purchases property, we can't sell it, we can't mortgage it or anything. So if we purchase it through our economic development arm, then
You have more flexibility.
there's more flexibility. It can be mortgaged, it can be sold. They can't put it in the fee, they can't put it in the trust, so it'll stay in the county fee.
You guys have a housing project out in the Doyle Colony area?
We actually, the tribe owns 8 acres there that was assigned to our housing authority through Nahasda. They're supposed to be putting some units there, but because of the water issue, it's kind of been placed on hold. And I also think we received a letter of opposition from the city of Porterville for that particular project.
You have your own water source?
We have our own wells on the property.
But you wouldn't be looking to put that into fee.
No.
I think, Tal, I think this is a good conversation, because I think in the past, the concern of the board has been sort of hopping, around with separate islands out in the county land, so or even in cities, the concept, I think there's never really been opposition to the idea of expanding the land base that is, moving out from the existing land, continuing in not in a hopscotch way, but rather just, moving out and expanding in that fashion.
Where's this parcel located on the east side?
North
Off of, what is the main road that goes?
You know where
Drive, Springville Drive?
It's on Springville Drive.
Springville
but
Drive,
yeah,
okay.
It's before the before that little bridge, and in between that and that mini mart, that Dave's Mini Mart that's right there, or Rip's Mini Mart, it's right in there.
Also, it's not real far out.
Oh, it's not that far out. And it goes all the way to the
It actually
highway.
borders the river.
It crosses.
It crosses the river. It
crosses
goes to the
over
highway.
to the highway.
To the highway. So,
8 acres.
How many homes were you wanting to put in there?
Trying to go with duplexes at first, but now they're looking at single dwellings, and I don't think there weren't that many, maybe 12? Or maybe 12. But I guess there's some zoning issues too that they're working on. But that's actually running through our housing authority, which is NAHASDA and HUD funding.
Mike, did you guys have any thing on that? I mean,
Actually, yeah, we met with city staff earlier this week to discuss that project. City had some concerns. What they're looking at is they've actually submitted a request for annexation of that parcel into the city. The south side of the parcel is immediately adjacent to city limits, so therefore it wouldn't be a hopscotch. They're looking at wanting to include the water source for that project as part of the East Porterville project that's going forward now, to include that into the water system is what they're proposing, rather than there's one well on site. There'd have to be another well drilled for to complete the community water system for that project. I believe it's proposed right now is 27 houses, I believe.
27?
Yeah, 27 houses. Fire had a concern about an additional access that we'd probably have to create an easement across another parcel that I would think it would be acceptable to be able to get a secondary access to that. But the city has requested to look at for annexation of that. So we met with actually your housing authority on a couple of days ago. I guess Friday. I guess we met with them, I believe, and they were going to update your council on the matter. But that's the way it stands right now. We're ready to process it forward as a county project and do the processing and that. But the city, we do have a general plan policy that if it's adjacent to the city and the city requests to consider annexation, that's where we're at right now. But if
so that, Mike, would that include city water and sewer?
sewer is set up through the Portobello sewer,
Vista?
yeah, Porta Vista. So sewer is not an issue regarding the project. Solely for the water.
You guys have any thoughts on that, or?
I think they can fit 27 units there.
that was going to be my
That's a lot of units on 80.
I believe that was one of the concerns of the city, that they thought there was the density of the project was a little bit too dense.
Maybe that's what we're considering.
That's only 3.5 per acre, though. It's at 8 acres.
The river runs through it, so you got the on either side. Even if we use
So 8
aerial
acres
findings.
includes all the right of
Yeah,
way of the
yeah.
river.
And what's you got, the slough runs through there?
Yeah,
It's not the Tule, it's a slough, right?
is it no? That's the South Fork.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it crosses all the way to the highway. So even we're restricted through IHS and through the BIA on how far we could be, how close we can be
Setback
to
requirements.
setbacks.
Well, that might be some of the resolution for the cities and their concerns too, for fewer houses being actually proposed.
What's proposed? Yeah, what's proposed at this point would be for the city requested. They said they would expedite the processing. That they would take all of what the county has already prepared, and we would give it to them for them to look at. The first step would be a PRC meeting, a project review committee meeting with the city, and I think that would get the initial input from the city is to see where they truly stand on the matter, and if If it can work through, great that way. If not, we can bring it back through and process as a county project.
Might sweeten the pot for the city of Porterville and tell them they can have all the elderberry bushes.
They're worthless now, don't you know? They're not worth anything.
But no, we want you guys to know that we're here to help you.
Chairman, in light of that, if I may, because we have discussed this previously, to keep this moving forward in a positive direction proactively, may I suggest that we bring this item back to the County City Porterville Policy Committee, and then perhaps we could have a meeting with us, tribe, and the city together so we're all on the same page, identify any significant issues so we can keep the process moving, because there is a letter of opposition on the record.
One of the things we did tie in to that MOU, though, was they have 6 months to begin their annexation process. So they have a time limit. They can't draw this out for 2 or 3 years anymore. There's a time limit built into that memorandum of understanding, so they have to react rather quickly. So when you approach that 6 months, someone needs to pull the trigger and either tell them to go for it or to stop, because there is a time limit there, and you ought to be aware of that.
In their letter, they state a timeline as far as having they don't have a planning commission in the city that goes to the city council for all these projects. They said that the timeline would be by the end of the year they would have had the project considered by the city council, as well as putting forward the application for annexation. So before the end of the year, they're saying that the application got forward. As far as the annexation process, should be fairly smooth and straightforward, because it's a single property owner. You're not going to get the objections from people not wanting to be in because it's a single property. So that should go smoother than normal annexations. So, but again, we're here to process it and expedite whatever that we can, help whatever we can away.
And Chairman, is there a view with regard to annexation concerning the project of the city?
That's actually the first I'm hearing about that, so.
Okay, that's why
We'll
we
talk
should
to our
have a
staff
meeting.
when we get back, yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to say too that you brought the idea of working on an MOU, and I think that's something we should pursue also.
With that particular property, we probably wouldn't be able to take that into trust, because we have to sign that over to our housing authority, put the title in their name, and then Nahasda would have for lack of a better word, a lien on that in case whoever moves in their defaults.
Well, I think I appreciate the concept of, again, the deed of trust land being those lands which are adjacent to your existing reservation properties, again, moving in that direction as opposed to jumping on different areas. I think that'd be part of the
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, let's move on to item number 6, discussion regarding off-reservation gaming and revenue projects. Could you guys bring us up to speed on?
I'll touch on the two-part determination, and then I'll let Councilman Santos speak on the revenue projects. Like I said, he's the president of our economic arm, and he's just hired a new CEO who's actually a member of the Chukchansi tribe named Chance, Alberta. So he's getting all of our current businesses, getting everything, reviewing them, and getting everything in order for the Eagle Feather 1, the Oak Pit Steakhouse, the Eagle Feather 2 over there in Kettleman, and our graphic shop where we do silk screening, embroidery, those types of things. So I'll let him touch on that. As far as the two-part, like I said, we're still moving forward on that. There's a lot of studies for that thing. We have to complete an EIS. We've had to recently RFP out for another environmental firm to come in and complete it. We did have an estimated completion date of November. Now it may be closer to January, February before that part's done. And once that's done, then we will take all of those studies that we've done, take that application, which will probably be about this thick, to the Bureau so that they can do it all over again. So that's where that's at right now. We're going to touch on that meeting next week on the 27th with Amy Dushke. She's the Pacific Regional Director. So that's where that project's at. We're still looking to have our staff meet with your staff to come up with any mitigation that we need to address for roads, emergency services, public safety, transportation, those types of things. So we're still looking to that. I have 2 council members that are assigned to that, and that's just a scheduling issue. I think right now like I said, we're all over the place right now.
That's the parcel that's right adjacent to the fairgrounds?
Yes, yes. It's just on this side of that solar farm there. And it's 40 acres. Because they're also working on an MOU with the city of Porterville as well.
Is there a concern about the proposed gambling facility to be built in Kern County or on I-5?
Yeah. I have some individual members that are opposed to that because that's actually one of the bands of Yokuts that's on our reservation, which is the alumni. That's their ancestral area, is that area where they're claiming. So we have some that are opposed. Officially, as a tribe, we try not to oppose our other sister tribes and whatever they're trying to do to benefit their people and provide services. So we tend to, we may not give you a letter of support, but we're not going to oppose you. Even if we know it's gonna hurt us, so we're just
You get a lot of
not
people
that
out of
way.
the Bakersfield area to come up to the casino, so.
So we're not opposing them. The council did not authorize me to give them a letter of support, but we're not going to oppose. With our project, we're going to be sending a delegation to each of our sister tribes asking the same thing. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what the project is. This is why we're doing it. The tribe has over 28 departments that it subsidizes, from education to our health clinic, police department, courthouse, our fire department. We have 2 fire departments, a wildland and then a structure. We have an ambulance service, which is on the agenda. We have our public works department. We have, there's just a lot of.
Gaming is what percentage of the budget?
It's probably 85 to 90% of the budget. As you guys are aware, all these grants, now you apply for a grant, they all want some type of contribution that you have to put in, matching funds.
So is this proposed property at the airport, would that be for a hotel, casino?
It's a hotel, casino, convention center. City of Porterville, I think the biggest venue you can get inside is probably the Veterans Center, because that's what we rent for our employee parties, which you might sit maybe 500. So we're looking at 20,000 square feet of actual convention space. There's 250 rooms, somewhere around there.
Yes.
And the increase in gaming devices is just nominal. Right now, we're licensed, or we're compacted up to 2,000. We're only running 1,250 or somewhere around there, and the proposed is only 1,800. So we're not even going to hit the limit on our current compact. But the main thing is to provide the
Housing.
the hotel and the convention center to make it more of a destination resort. Those of you that have been up there, you have to want to go there. Accidents have increased so high, which is why we have that ambulance service and then our structure fire. So.
I'm hearing a lot of good things about your River Steakhouse.
Oh yeah. Actually, the Yoke Pit won a lot of the.
Yeah.
It won about 7 or 8 of those. 8 of them. Yeah. That's his project.
How's your Reach City property? Does that work? I mean, I noticed that we went by the day, like there was a lot of folks that were there. Because I mean, when it was closed when you guys, I think, acquired it.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to kind of build back up your business and everything.
It's getting better. We partnered with Chevron for that particular property. It's just the building's kind of old, so there's some renovations that they're going to propose to bring it up to par.
Old, I think of it being new.
Well, the building itself.
I remember the old one that was there.
It's better than it was, but it could be a lot better than it currently is. So there's a lot of CapEx that'll be going into that through our economic development arm. But Gary can touch on those.
Yes, on the Reef City property, it's going through a lot of upgrades. The restrooms, of course, is a big deal for customers when they stop by. So we're currently getting bids on those right now, so we can upgrade the restrooms. And the dog run, of course, is there. We're looking at doing some propane there, and even a dump station for the people coming back and forth. So that's all being tied in right now in the works for that particular spot. So hopefully, and the business is starting to pick up there, and also some lighting. We're going to provide some lighting in the nighttime, so it'll be lit up a little bit more that way, for the safety of everybody. That stops there also. And there's being some surveillance also. We were having a lot of fuel theft out there. It hasn't been happening lately, and it was from people using their card, and they paid $20, but they got 600 gallons of fuel. I don't know if you guys heard of it, anything like that and stuff. So it's going through, all the law enforcement. We contacted the Tulare County Sheriff as well, worked with Kings County Sheriff because that's Kings County out there. But they've been saying that that's been going through, nationwide, people doing stuff like that. And there's different scams, just like the credit card scams with the fuel stations and stuff like that. So we've been working on that to minimize that because it was happening at least once a month for us.
They were putting $600 worth of fuel in a Toyota.
Well, I mean,
If it had trucks, I mean.
yeah, we service the the big rigs there too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, oh, yeah, the big rigs, yeah.
and we have the fuel pumps that with the larger nozzles that pump gas, the diesel a lot faster. So, I mean, 600 gallons you can be in and out there in 10-15 minutes. So.
A quick question. I was visiting with Willie about the mental health board because he's now sitting on the mental health board, and one of the subjects came up. We were talking about some of the economic development efforts, and he was saying something about a plan that you guys have at Eagle Feather to either bring it into trust or because something about you being able to bring the gas prices down because they're so high. Are you familiar with that or not?
It hasn't been brought to the council level yet.
Okay.
It really hasn't been discussed.
Okay.
Like the chairman was talking about earlier, if
it's not in
it was
trust,
purchased
you
by the
can't.
tribe, so if we just can't sell certain things, when it's not in trust.
If it's not in trust, okay.
Yeah, so,
That makes sense.
it hasn't been brought to the board yet. No.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we have no current plans to place that property in a trust.
Okay.
Your different menu? Your menu change
on
two?
Oh yeah, and also we just put out their crispy, crunchy chicken in the place. So hopefully that brings a lot more business and satisfies a lot of the customers because I know they was just
I think you should
barbecuing
put it
out
in the
at the
Superior
time.
Dairy ice cream place, because I know the Worthy family would stop there every time, going and coming.
So, yeah, so there's been a lot of upgrades to that place out there. So we're trying to make it more efficient for the campers and stuff, the people that travel from here, from the Central Valley to the coast, and they got to go right by there. So hopefully it works out for everybody from there. So.
You guys do if you do your casino and hotel out there, are you going to look for maybe putting some RV, people driving RVs, big RVs and stuff would come in and have a dump station?
At the Porterville Airport.
Or have you got that much room out there where you could do something like that?
There's going to be an area for that. There might even be a few. I told them that we didn't want to pay for a lot of pretty pictures at this point. So, getting all these renderings, I'm like, well, that doesn't really help.
Yeah.
So, but we are looking to have a place for RVs to actually park and maybe some hookups.
Okay, so
They
that would
can
be,
actually, if they wanted to
I think
stay
that would
there.
be beneficial to you. There's a lot of people that traveling that would stop and utilize your facilities and stuff and stay there maybe for a couple of days and gamble and stuff if they had a RV hookup.
I know the reservation, the gaming thing. I mean, we'd like to set up a meeting, down the road for this with you guys and us, and that way we can do a working meeting and that way everybody be on the same page. That's further down the road. Maybe early as middle of next month or more. But
What's your time frame on that? I mean, when would you like to begin construction?
well, we have a lot of obstacles we got to go through first before. I mean, I'd like to start construction tomorrow, but I mean, it doesn't work that fast.
Realistically, we're looking probably toward the end of next year.
End of next year, okay.
But we do want to sit down and have a working meeting with you and your staff and us and our staff, so that way you guys are all full aware of what's going on at a later date. So,
But
Moving
we
on.
did, by the way, when we had conversations a number of years ago when I was a junior member of this club, we had a subcommittee of board members, two members of the board, and our staff that met with a subcommittee of your tribal council and had those conversations. And so that might be a way to go forward. It's not just a staff issue; it's also a policy issue. So it's probably a good idea to look at maybe having some tribal council members and supervisors on this kind of conversation.
I have 2 council members assigned to that now. Was it Willie?
Brian and Willie?
Brian and Willie?
Yeah.
So if you guys want to assign 2, that'd be great.
And then I've been working on it pretty extensively also with, the team and stuff. So when we do something like that, you will see me. So, all of our other revenue projects, like the Eagle Feather Trading Post 1, it's doing pretty good. Then we got the 2 we just talked about. We have our Oak Pit Steakhouse that we just received 8 awards for through the Reader's Choice Board of Recorder. So we're all pretty stoked about that. You mentioned our River Steakhouse. That's at the casino part, and you would think it would get more traffic up there, just because of the casino name. But
And I'm surprised that there's not, because we'll eat up there once a month, and I'm surprised there's not more people in there. That place is so good.
Thank you. So
Well, I think it's just taken time, but, and of course, old Hopper and PK, they plug it pretty good on the morning on the radio show, especially now that you got steak and lobster up there.
yeah. So our Oak Pit, kind of outdoing our River Steakhouse now. So I'm kind of partial, because I sit on the tribal council also, but economic development board, as we all do. But the steakhouse I've been overseeing for the last probably 6 months, so we're kind of happy about the Oak Pit right now.
Yeah.
Getting all those awards, but it's we're trying as best as we can to keep it a fine dining down at Oak Pit. I know you get the people that come to church and stuff, and the elderly couples. Everybody wants to enjoy a nice steak, and in Porterville there's not really an area to really do that. So that's where we're kind of leaning towards more. So hopefully we get out of the bar and grill scene and just make it a fine dining area soon. So that's kind of the goal of the whole property right now. So
Do you folks still operate that airplane facility, or?
that's still there. Right now we're looking to liquidate a lot of that stuff. We still have it. The contracts.
It's not operational.
No, not really. No.
That was your charter service and flight? Bought Ed Wood and the bunch you bought that from? Yeah.
Planes are in their being serviced, their annual service, so all of our planes are currently down. The Aero Industries we're liquidating. We still have the Ed's business. What happened when we lost a lot of contracts with the Forest Service when they went to them turboprops, and our planes are a little too old and it's going to cost too much to fix them. So we're going to look at liquidating some of that and minimizing the expense that we're putting out. So probably keeping the King Air and the Cessna 421 will be the 2 planes we keep, which are the ones that can carry 6 to 8 people.
And use those for hire.
Yeah, for hire. Yeah.
People want to go
Or
to
when we have
Sacramento
meetings.
or-
Yeah. I wish we had one right now. I wouldn't have to drive to Sacramento next week. I could be there in an hour. I got to drive, so I got to leave the day before. The property also owned the brick house that we own. What he was talking about turning the Oak Pit into more of a fine dining is we'll take the bar portion of that, move that into that building that we own over there, so that can be your sports bar with your bar.
Is that in Porterville?
That's right in Porterville.
Yeah, it's right there,
Right.
right by
By
the
the post
transfer
office.
station.
Yeah, and it's right
Transfer
next to the
station.
post office.
Transit.
Yeah, right by the transit, the main hub.
You haven't got anything in there at all right now, right?
There's nothing in there right now, no. So that building will have to be brought up to code, and then we can do that transfer, as well as probably moving our graphic shop, which is located at the airport in one of those big warehouses. We'll probably bring that there so it's more easier to access for
I didn't know you had a graphic shop out there.
River Graphics.
Okay.
We've probably had it for about 8 years now, maybe.
About 8 years, yeah.
Screen printing and all that stuff.
Printing, embroidery,
Border cap.
Want us to wrap your vehicle? We do vehicle wraps.
Okay.
You'd be competing with us because we do that. That's part of our jail services. We do that same thing. Training people to yeah, we have free labor. So
Mike's actually very interested in the vehicle wrap. He wants a picture of himself around his Yukon. So.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Drive around like Kopi. You look like Kopi.
Yeah, like Kopi.
But yeah, for the revenue projects, that's that's kind of where we're at on all of those. So those are the 5 businesses that we currently operate through the Tulare Economic Development Corporation. So.
And you got anything on the horizon that you can talk about or not? If you don't worry about it. But
Well, there was one project that there was actually a company from Turkey that approached the tribe about those higher end sportsman shotguns.
oh yeah,
They wanted to build a plant
oh
on the reservation and to manufacture those for one of their United States holdings. But that's kind of sitting on a back burner right now due to other projects that we have right now.
raises the whole concept of trying to create an industrial park on your reservation. Businesses might find that there's a liability benefit or something to be there. Huh, interesting.
And I think we're going to start selling ammunition now here pretty soon.
Ammunition at the Eagle Feather
One.
really?
trading post. The tribe, we still have to come up with the ordinance and everything, but we will be offering ammunition to the surrounding communities.
And that's going to be in the near future. So.
Are the rules different on the reservation compared to ammunition rules off the reservation?
They're a little different.
Are they?
Yeah, they're a little different.
499 rounds per customer per day.
Okay.
That'd be sufficient.
You take one per box out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds good, guys. Looks like you're doing a good job.
And just for like fuel purposes, the tribe is very, very competitive in the fuel business. With the surrounding gas station owners, I guess the mom and pops, however you want to classify them. But there is we try to stay within reason. That way, it's compatible with everybody else. I know there's been talk about the taxes and the tribe gets it for a lot less and we could sell it for a lot less, but we try to stay competitive to make everybody competitive with us. So
What Councilman Santos has brought up in a previous meeting is talking with he's been talking to the other gas stations around the area, so he doesn't want to seriously undercut anybody and try to bring our prices up to where they're like you're saying, competitive with our neighbors. So that's one of the things that he's been working on. I think he's the only guy that's probably busier than I am.
I think that's really important. I think it's really important, especially to the stations there in Porterville, especially the main ones, the big ones, the Shells, and the guys.
And it's more revenue for you guys too.
Well, what we would save in the tax we pay for in transportation costs, so it almost washes.
just to keep everybody on level playing field, and try to be a community partner and not
Neighbor,
be a good neighbor. So.
Well, you're touching on an issue which is one of the reasons I think why it's I think there's a concern about, and I appreciate the tribe's position, but the tribe could take a different position, right, and say, well, we want to go out in the middle of someplace, put in feed trust land, undercut local industries, from the standpoint of not having to be different taxes and so forth. And I'm very appreciative that that's not the approach the tribe is taking, because that is I've raised that at our CSAC, because a lot of the focus has been on gaming. Well, gaming is one thing because you have kind of a monopoly situation there. But when you think about the fact, if you start putting all the different lands out in the little islands out in the counties or cities, and then put them into trust, and then you have different rules that apply to you, you could really put local businesses out of business. And that was a concern I've raised, is that with all the focus being on gaming, there needs to be a broader focus, because there's a bigger issue here. I mean, and there is the potential that, tribes could do that. They could put in auto dealerships, they could put in all kinds of things, and maybe be able to do so at such an advantage over somebody who's not tribal that they would put them out of business. So, I mean, that's I think something that it's a big picture thing that people need to be looking at down the road.
Yeah, and that's the point of being, trying to be the friendly neighbor and stuff. If you look at it, the big picture, long ways down, I mean, us being on the reservation, the tribe does not have, we don't have, car dealerships, we don't have grocery stores, we don't have gas stations, somewhere to buy our clothes or anything on the reservation. Well, pretty much on the reservation, we have our housing, and our gaming establishment. So anything that the tribal members, make or gain from, gaming or whatever it be, any kind of profit, it's spent in, 99% of it's spent in Tulare County or off the reservation. The 1%, you take with you when you get buried. So everything's spent off the reservation. I think that's the bigger picture that, the tribe would like to see people look at, because, we can't spend it on the reservation. Our dollar may turn over, a few times within the reservation in just a small area, which is our gaming area, and on food, but everything else is spent off the reservation, So, and that's, what, we'd like to perceive, so everybody can see, as well as us being the friendly neighbor. So that's
You
the
gotta look
big
at
picture.
Maserati. There's no competition.
We don't have nowhere to spend our money on the reservation, bottom line. So.
Okay, let's move on to regarding the ambulance service. I didn't realize you guys had your own ambulance service up there, so.
We've had our ambulance for, what, that long too? About 8 years?
Really?
Yeah, and the issue we're having is the county has its agreements with the other ambulance services. So if there's an emergency and someone gets injured, our ambulance will go in and stabilize them, our fire department. Well, we have to stop at the reservation boundary and wait for the other ambulance to come up, which could cause a major, yeah, it could, yeah, and then the liability issues. So what we'd like to do is meet with you and see if there's some way we can work that out to where, I know Camp Nelson has their own voluntary ambulance service that can transport, so we want to come up with some type of agreement so that we can transport. If it's one of our own, we can transport, but we do have non-member guests and visitors that come to the reservation that we may need to transport in times of the essence. In worst case scenario, we just drive and we'll meet that ambulance wherever we meet them. And
One thing strikes me, but there's the county aspect of it, but there's also then the consortium. Would they need to be a part of that process, the consortium of all the ambulance services now? Because they're the ones, basically what we have done is sort of set standards, and that consortium is the one that comes up with a plan. So it might be that we need to include them as much in this discussion as the county, because they're the ones who make those arrangements. But I think you bring up a very good point. It needs to be resolved.
It only makes sense that you'd be able to transport all the way into.
Because I think Camp Nelson can come all the way down.
yeah, they can come all the way down.
Yeah.
The typical approach within the authority that exists now is the closest ambulance always responds. And so if you were able to work out a cooperative agreement in the case of an accident happening on a reservation, the closest ambulance would always respond if it's from the reservation. And in the case that you're already occupied on a different incident, another ambulance service could come up there, or another ambulance company could come up to the reservation.
Yeah, and stand until you got
That's how we
back in
work.
service.
It's a very good model, and it's worked very well in the interest of the patients. So I think that if we could work together, that would be a great thing.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good.
So we're looking to transfer right now our ambulance services under our structure fire department. We're going to transfer that to our clinic so that they can do all the billing and do all that other, making sure because they're used to doing that. So that'll be transferred over there. And we actually have 2 ambulances. So when one leaves the reservation, we still have one there. It's just getting it staffed with the appropriate people, paramedics, and then the EMT 1s and 2s. Getting back to The gaming portion of it, for the two-part, the plans, I didn't bring it up all ago and I should have, the plans for the existing site, should the move go through and it moves, is we're actually going to transfer our clinic after we meet with the board and get their blessing on it and expand our services and have an actual Indian Health Services hospital on the reservation, which will kind of, using, when we designed it and we built one of those expansions, it was designed for that. Should it ever go away, what are we going to do with this building? Well, we can expand our health services, and it's built just so it'd be a hospital, which will kind of take some of the worry out of getting them to Sierra View or wherever they need to go. And then also expanding all of our education services, where our administration building is now, our gymnasium, our K through 4 school is. The administration portion would move up there and occupy a portion of the old building so that we can expand our education services to our members in those existing buildings there, because there's no place else to build there. And then IHS won't fund a lot of things because it's all a floodplain. Back in 1966 or something like that, when that big flood came through, our tribal administration building was under 3 foot of water where it sits. So during that 100-year flood, so yeah. So that's kind of where that's at.
That's thinking ahead.
Yeah.
I have a question back on the ambulance. Would the tribe consider being part of the consortium with the rest of the ambulance services? Because sometimes we have a gap from Porterville out to where the reservation's at, and we may have a problem with coverage. Let's say like the Hyder Ranch, the Carthage Ranch. Maybe your group covered some of that area as closest ambulance.
That would be part of the conversation with that authority.
Yeah, I think we would welcome that.
I mean, the idea is basically making you a part of the authority, and that's basically how they operate, is that idea that, like Phil said, it's nearest ambulance. So if somebody had a car accident just outside your reservation property, but you're the closest ambulance, you'd be the ones that would respond to that. And then again, from a public safety standpoint, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Right now we're responding, but all we do is stabilize until the other ambulance gets there.
Yeah, well,
Well, the closest one would be down there by Success Market.
You have paramedic level people on the ambulance, or are they just EMTs?
Currently they're EMTs, but they're looking to increase to the paramedics.
I think that would be an issue.
That's the requirement. That's one of the requirements.
Because that's the paramedics
Yeah.
do the requirement.
Which is why it's being transferred to our clinic. So that'll all be taken care
That'll
of.
be part of the conversation.
Good.
Great.
While we're talking about the ambulance services, is there any of the funding that you guys could offer to the Pure Point ambulance themselves? I know they've been doing a lot of fundraisers to try to upgrade their ambulance themselves, so it's just a question.
You mean Pier Point Springs?
Yes.
I always give them good works funds every year.
There-
Them and the
there's-
volunteer fire and the whole deal up there.
Yeah.
there aren't any funds
Yeah, everything's gone now, so.
on the county side besides
The
Good Works.
And I always try to help those guys every year. Those in the militia up at Ponderosa, Good Works funds.
Yeah, because they're basically, most of them are for-profit. There are some of the volunteer groups.
They're volunteer.
Yeah.
But most, I mean, so we don't, it's kind of a hands-off thing from the county. They have their own business model. A lot of counties have got one service, so they contract with one company to provide countywide service. And we made an election when that was brought to us to not do that, but to allow them to kind of put it back on the providers and say, here's the criteria you have to meet. If you can do that, we're not even going to look at trying to go out to a single provider service, and it's worked out very, very well. But we don't. It's not like we put, other than like Mike said, putting in some Good Works funds to a nonprofit organization. They have a business model. In fact, recently we had a company leave because the business model wasn't working for them. They were losing money, and the other ones had to kind of retrench and redevelop their boundaries and so forth. But so far, it's working out okay, I think.
I think the biggest problem up in those mountain areas is getting volunteers and finding volunteers that are educated enough to what needs, especially on an ambulance.
Yeah, do we still require paramedic status for the volunteers?
I think.
No.
Well, see, up in Three Rivers, we gave it up.
It got too difficult to get people.
Yeah,
I think,
it's
wasn't
too
it?
difficult to get volunteers to man the ambulance.
All those seniors.
Yeah, I try to help all those agencies up there, Upper Tule, volunteer ambulance, fire safe councils. I mean, you name it.
What we have done is, well, I don't know if we've done it lately, but I mean, like as far as when we have older equipment that, now we don't have ambulances, but like in fire equipment, we transfer it over to these organizations. So, I mean, that's one way we can help them.
Because you get the fire safe councils inside each one of these little communities like Alpine, Sequoia Crest, where they've got their equipment stored in a centralized area and they all know where it is, and they go hook onto the, if you've got fire hydrants and stuff, they can go hook onto them and actually get a fire put out before the fire truck gets there. Closest one's Camp Nelson. Takes a little while to get there sometimes. Okay.
It's like lunchtime to me.
Well, before you adjourn, you know, I run across council members in Sacramento every so often. There are issues that would help to you to have a supervisor there. We're available. Because we can advocate on your issues also. It's a two-way street. A lot of times I think it shows that you have local support outside of the tribe, which may give you a little bit more political clout. So if that arises, please let us know, and we'll arrange to have a supervisor go with you.
We welcome that, and we will offer the same. If there's anything the tribe can do, we can.
Just like our earlier conversation about with the Forest Service and so forth, I think there's a lot. I think we have a lot of common interests that we need to work together to try to promote.
Back in DC, probably at least once a month, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
lately.
Yeah.
You can take the mic to DC too.
I hate that trip, man. I hate that trip. Day on the plane going, day coming back. Yeah.
Always seem to mess up somewhere and you're stuck.
Yeah.
You guys drove back from
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City? Stuck in
Last,
Salt Lake
last
City.
month.
Weather get you?
Yeah, coming out of Reagan International, they held our plane up for an hour, and we had a 45-minute layover in Salt Lake City, and our plane left before we got there.
Yeah,
And
I
we wasn't gonna be able to fly out till the next night.
Oh man.
The staff that I was with, they already had plans to get home, so we rented us a vehicle and drove home
from
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City.
We pulled into Fresno where everybody was parked about 10 o'clock the next day. So it's about 12 hours. It said 11 hours and something, and it was every bit 11 hours.
I have to stop and walk every once in a while.
We stopped at Reno and had breakfast. Silver Legacy. But we made it.
You're young.
Okay.
Have some lunch.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys coming, and I think we've had some good conversations, and I know it's always good to see you guys. We used to see you more when we had Indian gaming, which benefit money, but doesn't look like we don't see any of that in the future, so.
Is that right? No more money?
Well, not in the near future that I'm seeing. Have you guys heard anything?
Yeah, we're not going to see anything coming back. Everything we're sending up, they're keeping.
Oh, yeah.
And
Going to what?
the states-
High-speed rail.
Yeah, probably. Whatever the state decides on.
Yeah.
But that brings up our compacting issue. We're in negotiations. We sent the letter out to the governor. That's another thing we want to work on. If we can spend the money locally here, we can get a credit through them, so we don't have to send that to them.
Oh,
So that whatever.
That's going to be all brought up in our working meeting with this.
But there again, we could, if we need letters of support from us, we'd be.
yeah.
We'd rather give it to our
Well,
surrounding
you
communities.
guys could put it out just like we do the Indian gaming money and give it to different organizations and.
Yes.
We send millions up there every year. I see the checks every quarter.
Oh.
So, and what comes back to the county, and look, nothing.
Yeah.
Sounds
That used to-
familiar. Or at best,
Hey, that used to be a big help to a lot of different organizations.
400,000 at best, maybe, but well, we're sending
Spend it on the roads,
millions of dollars up there. You know, they get 7%, so.
And like the chairman's saying, we'd rather send it here than.
Oh, yeah. We wish you would too. Yeah.
Well, the whole point is for mitigation, but I don't know how that high-speed rail's mitigation, but that's where it's,
You're a long
Yeah,
ways
that's
from the
not
station.
if that's where it's getting spent. I can't say where they're spending it, I don't know, but I know it's not coming back here.
Okay. Thanks for coming, and we're going to adjourn and we'll have lunch. We got
Thank
lunch
you for
prepared.
having us.
And there's restrooms right outside those doors there.